I stared at myself in the mirror and thought, if you're going to be a teacher for the foreseeable future, be a great one. Welcome to the Hack Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Barnes, bringing you right now solutions to some of your biggest teaching and learning problems. Now, let's hack learning.
I got out my bed early this morning. Down the road I go.
This is episode 81 of the Hack Learning Podcast, and in the open there, you heard a line from James Sturtevant in his book, Hacking Engagement, and that comes from the conclusion, and it's a very powerful one, and a story I'd like to share with you. And I'm bringing this up to talk about being a great teacher, which Jim Sturtevant is. You're talking about a guy that has been teaching for a very long time, well over 30 years, and I want to share this really heartfelt story that he tells in his book, and I think it's so important that it has been included in the new Hack Learning Anthology, which is a collection of hacks from the first 9 books in the series, and they're really for teachers and leaders. So when wrapping up that book, we were talking about how do you conclude a book that's filled with really a variety of popular hacks for teachers and leaders. And immediately I went to this conclusion from my good friend Jim Sturtevant, because I said, this book is not just about problem solving, but it's about inspiration. And it's the kind of material that makes people, teachers and leaders, say, I want to be good at what I do. I want to be great at what I do. And we've created this sort of blueprint for that. So we end it with the conclusion from Hacking Engagement, which now becomes also the conclusion of Hack Learning Anthology. And I want to share this story with you, and then in traditional hack learning form, I want to give you some right now solutions for being the best that you can be every day. So this is what Jim Sturtevant says at the end of his book, Hacking Engagement. Listen to this story. Bleak news greeted me in the summer of 2010. I was 5 years from retirement. While I had always enjoyed teaching, part of me was ready to commence a new chapter in my life. 30 years is a long time to do anything, but 30 years doesn't come close to representing the average American lifespan. I've never permitted my job to define me, so I was looking forward to spending the next 5 years planning my next professional excursion. On our teacher workday that fateful August, the day before the students arrived, I learned that the state of Ohio's public employment retirement systems had been devastated by the recession of 2008. The upshot was my October 2015 retirement target would be undermined. I'm a positive person, but it was like being informed in the last few miles of a marathon that the race would be extended. The next 24 hours were painful. I felt like I'd fulfilled my part of the obligation to the good people of Ohio. I like having a plan, and this development really shook me. As has happened frequently in my career, when I've been confronted by significant personal challenges, all those feelings of turmoil evaporated at 7:30 a.m. the next day, the first day of school. A sweet 14-year-old girl marched up to me, smiled, and raised her right hand. I looked at her quizzically, but then I instinctively raised my right hand too. Then I caught on, and we high-fived one another. She said, "I'm so glad you're my teacher. I've heard awesome things about you." I thanked her and then quickly shuffled down the hall to the small men's room in the faculty lounge. I shut the door, locked it, rotated to a corner, and broke into passionate sobs. It was so intense, so unexpected. It suddenly dawned on me how selfish I'd been. I remembered what an awesome privilege it is to help kids blossom. I composed myself, blew my nose, stared at myself in the mirror, and thought, if you're going to be a teacher for the foreseeable future, be a great one. In August of 2016, I'll begin my 32nd year of bonding, encouraging and learning from youngsters. And there's no end in sight. I'm grateful for my experience in 2010. It shamed and inspired me. Since then, I've become a much better teacher. I'm the old guy in the building who's not afraid to try things. I've recommitted myself to passionate teaching, to compassionate teaching. I love learning new tactics from younger, tech-savvy colleagues. As a result, my students have thrived. The past 5 years in the classroom have been magical. I published my first book. I've made amazing friends with podcasts and on Voxer. And now I'm so excited to offer this book, which wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for a sweet and tender compliment offered by a child on a late summer morning. Maybe I can be that motivating force for you. Good luck with engaging your students. And that is an excerpt from James Sturtevant's Conclusion of Hacking Engagement, and one we have now added as the staple, I think, concluding part of the Hack Learning Anthology, a collection of great problem-solving chapters from the first 9 books in the Hack Learning series. But this podcast episode is about being the best that you can be every day. And that's why I use Jim's example from his book, because this is a guy, when you think about it, who has taught for over 3 decades. Now imagine people you know. Think of your colleagues, if you're a teacher or a school leader or even in another profession listening to this podcast. Think of people you know who have done the job for 30 or more years. What are they like? And you don't have to tell anyone your thoughts openly, but do you see some people who are tired, who feel like maybe they're mailing it in daily? And just you think, man, maybe it's time for those people to retire. What about you? Are you at that place? Are you 25 or 30 years into teaching or any other profession, but something that's really, really difficult? Teaching is just, it's super hard. It's taxing. So think of those things, and then whether it's your colleague or you, think, well, I'd like to do what Jim Sturtevant did. I would like to be revitalized. I'd like to be the best that I can be every day until the end of this journey comes. How does he do it? Well, you heard as I was reading Sturtevant's conclusion to his book how he talked about sort of re-energizing himself and learning from younger people and infusing technology like Voxer. We've talked about Voxer on this, and you could learn a whole lot more about Voxer and other things we're mentioning on our podcast page at hacklearningpodcast.com. But Jim says, I started to infuse technology. I became compassionate again and realized what an awesome opportunity I have to impact kids. So what could you do if you're thinking, wow, this sounds great, which I'm hoping you are? And I often have people, I'm happy to say, tell me, when I listen to the Hack Learning podcast, a lot of times I'm invigorated, I'm energized. I think, oh, this is cool. I want to go try this. So what could be better than trying to make yourself the best that you can possibly be every day? What are some steps you can do? Well, I'm going to give you a few that I think you could start tomorrow or today if you happen to be on your way to work that would help you be the best that you can be. So here's one. Take on a passion project. And there's more about passion projects in episode 74. You can find that at hacklearning.org/passion projects. And in that episode, we talk about finding something that excites you about what you do. And there's a lot in there about school leaders and what leaders can do to inspire that in people who work for them, to give them passion projects. Think about what Jim Sturtevant did. He wrote a book where he talked about how to connect with kids because that's something that he was good at. His first book's called You've Got to Connect. And then, not too long after that, when I got to know Jim, we talked about sort of expanding on that project, and then he did Hacking Engagement, 50 Tips and Tools to Engage Teachers and Learners Daily. And now he does a Hacking Engagement podcast. And his passion is sharing his wealth of experience, but also sharing his journey as it continues and how he grows. He brings kids onto his podcast, students, and has them talk about their experiences, which is really amazing when you think about it. And that's his passion, is engaging with kids and giving them a voice and helping teachers be the best they can be. So those are passion projects. So you could write a book, you could write a blog, you could start a podcast, and all of these things are really easy to do. So that's one thing. Take on a passion project because it'll get you more excited and help you get past the things that make the job difficult. And there are so many of those. So another thing you could do is reflect. And this one's so easy. But reflect on the good that you do, and that's the hard part because sometimes when we reflect, we think about the hurdles. We think about the things that are difficult about our job, the rough day we had. If you're a teacher, the things that went wrong in the classroom, and those are myriad. Every day we think about it, things go wrong. That's just the nature of the business. But there are days when maybe you feel like so many things went wrong. Try and think of the one thing that went right. When did a kid smile? When did you say something that made a student laugh? When did you provide a compliment that maybe kids don't get that often? When did you let them know you cared? When did the light bulb go off over someone's head because of something you did? When you reflect on the good that you do each day, each month, and throughout a school year or your work year, whenever that is, if you're not a teacher, think of the good that you do and hold on to that. Reflecting on that and realizing the good that you do makes it a whole lot easier to then be the best that you can be every day. And one more thing I think you can do that will help you be the best you can be, and this one might seem strange, I think you should cry because we need to let go. Crying is very cathartic. It helps you to get emotions out. And those emotions might be sadness. They might be anger. Sometimes they're joy. And I think that's a really important thing to do. The late, great Jim Valvano, former college basketball coach who started the V Foundation because he died from cancer eventually, and one of the most beloved coaches you would ever know. And a wonderful speaker. He talked about crying, and he said that, as a part of your day, it's something to do because it really, along with smiling and laughing and the good things, crying can be that catharsis that you need. So take on a passion project and reflect on the good that you do, and whether they are tears of pain or tears of joy, cry because it'll make you better. Those things will make you better, and they will help make you the best that you can be every day. Hey, if you'd like to read Jim Sturdivant's conclusion from Hacking Engagement, if you have Hacking Engagement, great, you could get it there. But also keep in mind that we have included his conclusion in the new Hack Learning Anthology. And Hack Learning Anthology just became available. You could find it on Amazon. And it's a book that takes the most popular hacks from 9 Hack Learning Series books. And these are for teachers and leaders. They're things that you can do. They address big problems, and they give you a blueprint for solving those problems tomorrow and then building capacity so the problems don't return. We're very excited about the Hack Learning Anthology. You can learn about it at hacklearning.org/anthology, and you can find it on Amazon, and we're excited about it. So take a look at Hack Learning Anthology. And remember, be the best that you can be. It's not that difficult to do. Take on a passion project, reflect, and don't be afraid to cry. And thanks for listening to the Hack Learning Podcast. As always, we continue the conversation at #HackLearning on Twitter and on the show notes page at hacklearningpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.